Hey guys, I'm 4 minutes late. I was trying to get this thing to work on OBS and I just could not get it to work. But that's all right. We'll deal with it. So, hope you guys are doing well. I think last week we talked about hopefully my chat's live so you guys can like say anything in the chat. This looks like we got 2 people. Maybe we'll just wait a little longer. Let's see. I was trying to get OBS set up so I could live stream onto Facebook as well, but long story. We'll fix it next week. Last week we covered, and we got 0. Last week we covered who we are and who we are, right? All we are just a awareness in a field of intelligence that creates and receives a structure within a field. So what does that mean, right? How does that apply to me? Well, we create judgments in the mind, and this week I really want to talk about parasitic attachments, because parasitic attachments come in all forms, shapes, and sizes. Parasites are part of nature, right? I mean, we have parasites that show up in our biofield for a lot of different reasons. Parasites glom onto our body. We all have skin parasites that eat off of our skin cells. They, microscopic parasites are all over our body. They're within our intestinal tract. They're everywhere. So parasites are part of nature. It's actually part of our nature to be parasitic. We live off the energy that is coming in from our lower chakras. The last thing we want to do is create a parasitic tendency in the mind, because that pulls us back down. So that's the purpose of talking about parasitic attachments and what parasitic attachments are. If we die, it usually means that we have some kind of parasitic attachment pulling us back down into the earth. It's hard to think of it like that, but the Bible actually talks about this in a very roundabout way. When you're eating from the earth, you get pulled back down into the earth. Right? It makes sense that you go back to whatever you're eating. And if we're eating things that are coming up from the ground, then we're just going to pull us back into the ground. Those habits and the reason that we do those things is because of parasitic emotional attachments of who we think we are. Right? We're not a temporary being. When you look at the picture of the field, if we're all connected instantaneously to everything in time space at 1 0 point, which is our heart, and we're just creating a structure within a field, the masculine and feminine aspects of that, then theoretically we're all just immortal. And so most of us are dying from false senses of identity, and those false senses of identity manifest themselves in a lot of different ways. I can think that I'm Brian Curtis, but I mean, realistically, no, I'm something else. Brian Curtis is just a temporary placeholder for a percentage of the total awareness of the universe, I guess you could say. And you could say the same thing about yourself, right? John Doe is just a temporary placeholder for a limited, a small expression of the universe that has the potential to infinitely express itself and receive in proportion. And so that's what parasitic attachments prevent. They prevent our heart expression, and that can show up in a lot of different ways. It can show up in how we feel about ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we interact with how we interact with each other and how we treat each other is directly respective of that. So that's why we've got, when we have judgments of the mind and any kind of parasitic attachment that kind of judges the structure, when you really think about it and you look at everything, it's just a structure within a field. It's all coming from source. So how could you judge one structure as greater than another? It's all just growing. And if you can recognize the fact that it's all growing forever over time, then how can we judge anything? So how can we even judge ourselves? So I always hear this in the business community, and a lot of self-help stuff is people talk about, well, show up and become a better version of yourself. Everybody's trying to become a better version of themselves. But the reality is you already have everything. If you are just a heart space that's instantaneously connected to everything, you have an infinite amount of potential already there. It's just a process of letting go, because as you let go, then the field expands because you're no longer holding on to anything energetically. As you're letting go of things, your emotional field expands. Your mind, you start to download more and more information. So it's just a process of letting go. That's how things grow, is they let go of things. And you're just letting go of any kind of attachment to what you should or shouldn't be doing, or and just living from your heart space, because your heart is going to tell you what it wants to do. And that's all it really wants to do, is provide love and receive love. And how do we love one another? Well, we want to provide healing energy for one another. And we want to, if the heart wants to connect with every other heart in the system, because that's what, when you look at the model of the universe, that's what it's doing. Imagine a lot of little balls, where the center point of each little ball is connected to every other little ball in the universe, and the way that it's connected is shaped just like the little ball. That's how everything works. When you look at everything from a microscopic scale, and like you look at atoms, they're just a little fuzzy ball. It's just a toroidal field that's switching back and forth, positive and negative, and it's switching so fast it turns into a fuzzy little ball because the atoms are 100 trillion times smaller than relative to our body. So it's moving that many times faster. Space and time are relative. So, as I know these are all technical terms, but just trying to give the example of how everything is connected in exactly the same way. And so when you look at it like that, you can see that we're all trying to connect at our heart space. And so the only way that you can connect at your heart space is to provide healing energy from the heart to the people around you. And it's easiest to do that with people, because people, we are a lot more relative in space time than me to a rock. It's pretty hard for me to develop a relationship with a rock. Or, it's a lot easier to develop relationships with our animals. And a lot of times, when we have a hard time developing relationships with other people, we'll go and develop, we'll have a lot of pets, because it's easy to have a relationship with a pet because the pet depends on you. And there's a part of us that wants the people around us to depend on us. But if we don't show up for ourselves, it's really hard to depend on one another, because it feels good when it feels like you're needed, right? So pets create that feeling of, oh, this thing needs me and loves me because it needs me. And it's not easy when you're in a relationship with another person and it doesn't feel like they need you, or that you don't feel like you're being loved in any way, right? Relationships are a hard thing for people, because we have to learn about ourselves and understand how to let go of things in order to really have healthy relationships with one another. And that's what this place is all about. It has nothing to do with making money or any of this stuff. It has to do with creating and receiving in a healthy way together. And so I've just recently saw some, and I'm starting to see this in the group collective. As an entrepreneur, if you've been in the industry for a long time, you see that there's a slow constriction in the coaching market. For one thing, there's less money to go around, and if you've got more and more of that type of job description moving into the marketplace because there's just more entrepreneurs. 2025 saw a record number of entrepreneurs come into the industry this year. um, there's just a constriction in the market. You can't, the money, if you're just circling the money around between coaches, the money is actually slowly getting spent on food, shelter, all the things that we actually need. So that's what you'll see, a slow constriction uh, in the market for that reason. Because if everybody is just marketing, coaching, trying to do some kind of service based, where the businesses that are actually producing the things that we actually need, like food, shelter, water, transportation, utilities, medical services, those things soak up the primary parts of the economy. And so there's a big constriction. So that constriction has to lead to a restructure of how we work together. And all of us want to work in a healthy way together. This is something that I try to be teaching to the business community because I could see it coming. There's no question. You can't, like, when you recognize that growth happens over time by letting things go. I can explain that in 15 minutes to somebody. How can I charge money for that? It doesn't make sense. The ability to let things go and not be in a state of judgment, and understanding that somebody else is just going through a process of letting go of fear, anxiety, letting go of the idea that the world is out to get them, all those things. um, can't really sell that. All you can do is work with people where they're at and love them unconditionally, and teach that that's what they want too. In the end, that's all what we all want, is to love each other unconditionally and be able to create and receive together. But parasitic attachments are preventing that on a large scale. And the parasitic attachment mostly is external identifying yourself. Right? If we're identifying ourselves with something external, we have a false sense of identity, and then it becomes a negative emotional attachment. Because if we lose that thing, whether it's a fancy car, nice house, whatever, you might have grown up in a really poor household where you didn't have much money. But and you might have a negative emotional attachment to, living in a nicer house or having a nicer car. So there's a restriction there. When the fact of the matter is, none of it really matters. It's not who you are. Who you are is something that wants to give and receive love and heal its environment to make it feel better. And the only way that you can make something feel better is by making yourself feel better and just letting things go. And then your environment will naturally change by doing that for yourself. So, how many kinds of, I guess we could talk about parasites and how many different kinds of parasites there are. Comfort food is kind of like a parasitic attachment, right? Something that makes you feel good in the moment, but it's not permanent. Anything that will make you, that is triggering the dopamine response, that makes you feel good in the moment, is a type of parasitic attachment, especially if it becomes habitual. Now, if it's something that you can enjoy and you can stay non-attached to, then that's different, right? Like if you can have a beer once a month and just enjoy the taste of a beer. But when you feel like you have to slug a six pack every night before you go to bed, then obviously that's kind of it's not the best thing. It's not uh, the best emotional attachment. But we should have the freedom to be able to enjoy everything without being negatively attached to it, enjoying each other's time and creating and receiving together without being attached to the things that we create. Because if you're attached to them and you try to own them, it becomes a negative emotional attachment. And then we're not able to enjoy them together. That's why we've created the business models that we have today, where each individual is fighting for control to own something because we don't have the right contract in place where we can treat each other equally. Like a natural organism where everybody's working in harmony together and creating something from a shared vision instead of working for somebody else's vision. That's why there's so many people that leave business models because we don't want to go work for somebody else's vision after a while. We realize that there's no, what is my heart doing? Right? I mean, the only reason I'm here is to make money. And if the only reason I'm here to make money, then I'm basically putting my identity outside of myself, or the thing that I'm doing is just out of a state of fear and anxiety. Once you understand that and you go in the other direction, the rabbit hole goes as far as you can take it. Um, because once your mind expands and your heart expands, you'll realize that the heart has all the information. And by letting things go, and if you're letting go of any kind of parasitic attachment, what happens is your heart starts to rule your mind, and you no longer overthink anything. Then every interaction that you have with anybody becomes, okay, what's my heart trying to tell this person? And that's where you start falling into the instantaneous healing practices. It's why you've got so many people that exercise hypnotic therapy now, because you can shut off the mind and then reprogram it through hypnotic therapy. Now that goes a long ways, and that is an excellent healing modality because we've figured out that the mind wants to fight the body's ability to heal because it's under stress. If you put the body under stress, it won't heal. So the only way to get the body to heal is to shut it off, because the heart has all the energy and information in it. Always remember that. And that's all the heart wants to do is provide and receive. So if it can't provide and the mind is a block, the best way is to just shut the mind off so the heart can provide. And then you can program the mind to align with the heart's need to heal the body. Um, Fantastic. There's numerous studies on this. Joe Dispenza, does a lot of work on this, and it really has gone into the ability to program the mind and body to heal. And if you just get in the right meditative state, the body will naturally heal itself because you're quieting the mind. The mind is no longer in stress because the heart can produce anything. And we find there's chemicals that just show up in the body. And the reality is, if the heart is instantaneously connected to everything in space time, then everything can be instantaneously created from the field. It's like the quantum field. And if you can align the mind and understand that that's how that works, then that's how you can, as long as you're getting in a state of surrender, you can do that. You can't force it with anybody. But if somebody else understands that process and then surrenders to healing to somebody else that understands that process, that's when you have instantaneous healing. And but you have to get rid of the parasitic attachments that are telling you that that's not how things work, because your eyes and your ears and everything else of what you're seeing is telling you a different story. It's telling you that everything is conflicted, that everything isn't all coming from one source, but it is. I uh, advise you to look at this way. So our own bodies, if you think about it this way, our own bodies are creative and receptive circuits. Now, the entire creative circuit on the top half of my body is non-physical. From the heart, the mouth speaks. So my mouth, I'm speaking. This is a non-physical, you can't see it. It's just sound waves. My thoughts are even more subtle, right? We can measure thoughts, but they fall into the alpha beta waves where they're super high frequency, much harder to measure than the voice. And then on up, those are all non-physical. But everything that we see that we've created started in the non-physical. The car you're driving, the house you're living in, was all a picture in someone's mind before it ever manifested in physical reality. And if we recognize that, then our how do we create a group that can do that as a whole and create images that benefit everybody? That's the perfect world, right? Is when and where if everybody is operating in that kind of synchronicity where we're surrendering to the heart of each other's heart space, that's when profound healing happens. We all live shorter lives because you're living in a shared community. It's just a picture of heaven that I think I've had from a very young childhood. And it's hard to be able to express that, as a kid when everybody's conflicted. And then you start to not believe in it, right? Because then you think, well, how is that even possible? Because the world I'm living in doesn't even look remotely similar to that kind of, the images that you get as a small child. Imagine what the images that of the small children that are being born now are seeing, and the world that they're growing up in is vastly different than a child's imagination, right? And the only reason that we're not living in a children's paradise is because of these parasitic attachments and fear that you have to protect yourself from something out there. But it's all you. What's another example of parasitic attachment? Any sense of fear, right? When you run into animals, I'm in the middle of finishing a second book, and uh, I kind of run ideas through ChatGPT now because ChatGPT is it's just a good reference point, or other people, my brother, some other people. But when talking about fear, I learned this really as a small kid, and any of you that grew up in families that had a lot of animals probably went through this, where you understand that an animal is going to negatively respond if you show fear in any way. And either you're people that are naturally afraid of animals aren't comfortable around it and the animals will sense it. For example, my dad. My dad has never been comfortable around animals, and my son's got this little dog that just starts barking her head off as soon as dad comes in the room because she can sense that he's not comfortable around her. And he doesn't act towards her like you would act towards a regular animal. So if you have any sense of fear or any anxiety that shows up with any animal that shows up, it's going to respond. Either it's going to attack you or it's just going to start barking at you. Warning, that thing is prey. Bark, 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 because fear means you're prey. You're scared. Right? You're scared of something out there might get you. That means you're prey. I was walking outside the house one time, and the neighbors had rams, and they got out. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. I was walking Squirrel, my son's little red miniature pincher, and they had gotten out. And I came around a corner, and I had two rams just barreling down on me. They saw me, and they put their heads down and just like straight at me. And I looked at him, and in my mind, there was a part of me that tried to flip into what are you going to do? And I knew there was really only one response that even makes sense. I just squatted down on my haunches, put my hands out, and was like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" I looked at them just straight out like that, and they got within about 5 feet of me, and they kind of stopped and looked at me like, "What's going on?" Looked at each other, because I wasn't running, I wasn't negatively reacting to them charging me. They were excited to get out, and they were going to charge the first thing that they saw. And my little dog was a little bit freaked out. She's barking, bark, bark, because she's scared. She's just a natural protector animal. And I got close to them, and they let me pet them, and you know, they understood that I wasn't scared of them. Another thing happened to me fairly recently, where I went into somebody's house and I ran into a dog that had never seen me before, and I could tell it had mean intent. And If you show any fear in front of a dog like that, if you're in its house, that's actually a little bit of a dangerous situation if you don't know what you're doing. The last thing you want to do is freak out, because if you freak out, the dog's going to attack you, because then it's reacting to, because if you show that you're uncomfortable in that house, you're showing that you're not welcome there because you don't feel like you should belong there. So the last thing you want to do is freak out. Um, he was just rah, rah. It was a big black lab, and I just put my hands out. Always put your hands straight out like this with your palms up. And I just looked at him. I was like, "Hey, buddy, how's it going?" I just started smiling at him, and he tried to get a response out of me. He got a little bit of confusion look on his face, and he barked out, and he's like, "Rah, rah, rah, rah," and he tried to get me to respond. And I just like, "Hey, I'm fine." I just kept putting my hands up. What's the matter? And I was waiting for Joey, the neighbor, to show up. And Joey came around the corner, and because I was going to give him some, I was cleaning out of storage, and I had just boxes of these purses that Marissa, a friend of ours that moved to California, had left in our shed, and she had so many boxes of purses and shoes, and my next door neighbor had little girls that could use these, so I was trying to get a hold of him to give them to his girls, because he's got 3 girls in the house, and some pretty nice purses and shoes, like, yeah, but they've been in there for 10 years, and Marissa wasn't going to use them. So those are just small examples of parasitic attachments, right? That can pull us into any type of fear. Is a kind of attachment because it's not grounded in the present. Your mind is trying to create something, a possible scenario that isn't happening right now. Fear is never grounded in the present. You will never have anything that you're afraid of that's manifesting itself right now. Right? All of it is rooted in the fear of death. Fear of death is the ultimate source for any type of fear when you really think about it. And if death, when we observe nature and we think about what's going on around us, if death is just transformation, because the only way to really live is to continue to die each and every moment. Our bodies don't even have none of the same cells after 7 years. So science has actually studied this and tried to figure out there is a little bit of a mystery of why we even grow older. If our cells regenerate every 7 years, then why do we keep looking older? That really doesn't make sense, right? The only reason is because we keep holding on to the past. Don't realize it, but we keep pulling the past into the future. But if you can stay present, there is always unlimited creative potential in the present moment. But if we're trying to pull from the past, and we're always living in the past, and we're always gathering information from what's happened and what, you know, maybe thinking about what could have happened, those are all parasitic attachments of the mind. Because the things that we see, taste, touch, and experience are all things that came from the non-physical. Remember, we can go back to that, where it all came from the heart space of the larger organism that we're looking at. So when we get attached to it and we say, well, I need this thing or I'm going to die, we just pull ourselves back down into the past and pull ourselves back down into the soil and start looking older. We can no longer live like kids again, because that's all of what all of our hearts want, is to just live like kids and create together and surrender to the vision that we have for each other. And then we could create heaven on earth, right? I mean, that's just what it is. But people get tied up into business models and, whatever, instead of just healing the body. That's all you really want to do, is just heal the body. And so you're healing connection points between hearts. And once you can do that, then there's no more fear and anxiety. And we stop trying to sell to one another. And then we just say, hey, what do you need? Just do what you're asked. It's a lot easier to do what you're asked than it is to try and sell something to somebody. I guarantee you. I've been living the life of do what I'm asked for a long time. And I can tell you from living both lifestyles, it is definitely a much better way to live. There's no comparison, right? Because think about, so I'm gonna throw this guy before I get off here. It's 11:35, and I don't want to let this run too long, especially if I'm not directly interacting with any of you and you guys aren't asking questions in the chat, because I like hearing your guys' stories. We tried to make this a Zoom meeting originally, but we didn't have. I think there's not enough people that understand how to maybe get on the Zoom call, or maybe they weren't getting the right link. So it's just a little bit easier just to do this on YouTube Live for now. But imagine this. So think about how much we actually need in society. We've got, what do we need? We need food, shelter, medical services, transportation, utilities. How many people in the world actually work for the percentage of people, say globally, are actually making sure we have water, utilities, food and water? Agriculture industry is pretty big. It's over 20% globally. Shelter, just building houses, houses that we actually need, not just, mega mansions for one guy or whatever. So that's a little bit inefficient statistic. For one thing, if we're all building it for one another, we would probably have some pretty big party palaces that nobody lived in, right? And medical services. I think it's somewhere around 30-40% globally, which means of the workforce. That means 60% of our workforce is working towards things that doesn't support travel, just fundamental things that we actually do and for ourselves. So if you spread that across a community and say, well, Jill, I'm just going to do what I'm asked. What do you need me to do? And organize it, because you got to somebody's got to be able to organize it, that treat each other equally. Nobody likes to work those jobs because they don't get treated well in our society. For whatever reason, we're paying our teachers and our utility workers less than everybody else. It doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, there's some exceptions to that. And I live in Washington State, and electricians and plumbers, and they make pretty decent money. But for the most part, globally, we pay those people less money, which doesn't make any sense. Why would you pay the people that support our society and the backbone of society the least amount of money? And then you're going to pay somebody else, the CEO of a company, that all he's doing is just rolling. It just makes no sense, right? But that's because of those parasitic attachments, right? That's how we're weighing our self-worth. And that's how we've externalized our success, instead of saying that the only success that we ever had to do was let go of things and open up the heart space and be able to heal the relationships between us and make sure that we're demanding to be treated equally and not go to work for somebody else that's going to treat us unequally, because it's hard on your heart space. Why would you do that to ourselves? I did it to myself for years. Much easier to just do it your ass. So globally, let's say from a theoretical or philosophical standpoint, let's say we spread out the load of just the backbone of what the community needs across the entire spectrum of workforce. You probably work 10 hours or less a week. I ran all the numbers through ChatGPT, and I actually said that, yeah, that's a really accurate assessment, because you can't get the numbers exactly, but the percentages for people that do those jobs, and then if you just ran it out, like if everybody just took care of the things that we needed, then we would have an extra each individual would have an extra 20 or 30 hours to create what they wanted to create. And then if you organized it the same way into groups, then you would surrender to an idea and create what the community needed or wanted. Entertainment, new technology, as long as it didn't negatively impact the community. You want to make sure that what you're creating doesn't negatively impact the community. And if the individual doesn't have the power to say no, that's why We haven't created something that's beneficial for everybody because the individual has never been given the power to say no and amend the idea that's being placed in front of them. How many of us have the ability to change the laws in our local state or government? I mean, you would literally have to go try to petition for over a year, you'd be, and 99% of the time, you're completely wasting your time. Not only that, but whatever law you're trying to do is probably going to negatively impact somebody else. You don't even realize it because they aren't able to speak up and amend whatever it is that you're proposing. There's no way that I could ever place anything. So you have to create a system. You have to do that, you know, for each other. Not an easy thing to do, but for the individual to be free. And this is something that I'll leave with you guys today. Just do what you're asked. More than anything, do what you're asked, and then don't judge. And everybody deserves love. We just don't. We're just. It's just a process of letting go because all of us are equal. It's just that if we have too many parasitic attachments of the mind that are telling us something, or we're believing in something that's not real, then it covers up who we really are. We're already there. Everybody's already the same. They have to be because it's all the same. It's all a structure within a field, and it's all coming from source. So even you might be looking at the most terrible killer murderer. That's just somebody that has so many attachments of the mind and heart that they need some tremendous healing to let all that stuff go. Because if they can't let it go, then it'll just kill them a lot faster. And have empathy for them. You don't have to get involved if you don't have the power to heal them, or you do have the power to heal them. You just don't. If you have the wrong parasitic attachments, you don't realize that you do. That's that's just the thing. We have the power to heal anything, absolutely anything. So I'll leave that with you guys, and love you. My phone keeps going off here. I'm trying to quiet it. I did quiet it earlier so that it wouldn't get noisy on me during this. And hopefully, my streaming software should be set up, so I should be able to stream onto Facebook and YouTube next week. Next Friday, it's actually Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. I did have a picture that I wanted to share today because that's why I wanted to run my streaming software, but it didn't. I couldn't get it to work, so I'll share it next week. Next week will be a better week for telling that story anyway. But anyway, thanks for coming, guys. Well, thank you, Lynn. Yeah, thanks for coming, guys. Don't ever forget that you all of us have an unlimited power to heal ourselves and our environment, and it's all about just making sure that we get out of our minds and get into our childlike energy and loving unconditionally and just accepting people where they're at. And when people aren't doing the same, you just kind of have to set strong boundaries, right? But then just get up in a position to teach. And when you can teach and love and not force, then things happen naturally and gradually and in the right way. So, love you guys. Have a great day.